charge the cost on the direct personal cost. It's the left column, A1. Is the only contract with the person, or are there several contracts? Is the same as with the first question. It will be direct personal cost. But, for example, is the contract concluded with the person or with the company? If it's an organization that is concluding the contract with another organization, then what do you think? Where it fits? Do you think, is it a direct personal cost? Is it the A column? Or do you think it's the B or D? Some volunteer. Zuzka. Just guess. Tatiana, what do you think?
B.
It's either B or D. It can be under B or it can be also under D. It really depends whether you are implementing a task or not. And I will talk about the difference between the contracts and subcontracts later, and you will see based on one slide where you are going to declare the costs if you are concluding a contract between university, let's say, and an SME, for example. How to calculate the personal cost? We've got this great formula. Very easy. Honestly, this is very easy. What is behind is not. But this slide is beautiful. I love it. It's so easy. You just have the hours that you work on the project, which you can find in your time records, reliable time records. I recommend you timesheets. You multiply them with the hourly rate, which is in euros, of course, and you've got also a formula to calculate the hourly rate. You can also use the specific unit cost, which I mentioned, and the unit costs are for the SME owners without salaries and physical person without salaries. Plus, if you are eligible for the additional remuneration, you have to be non-profit legal entity to be eligible. Then you can also add the additional remuneration part. And here I'd like to say that the non-profit legal entity, you can find the definition in an annotated grant agreement, or I can give you the definition, but also the companies that do not distribute the profit among the owners or shareholders is considered as non-profit. Plus public sector, of course. So this is the calculation for the personal costs. Easy. Personal costs, hours worked for the action. Please, during the implementation, only declare the hours actually worked on the action and only charge the hours that you actually work on the action. This is very critical. You cannot declare budgeted time, although you are making some estimation, some budgeted time in the proposal, and I also said the Annex 2 is estimated budget. But you can't declare estimated time or budgeted time. Estimated is that you guess how much time you spend on the project. Doesn't make sense. You have to declare the actually work time. And also the time allocation is, I would say, not recommended. It's also not allowed. But you've got one very specific case when you are fully or exclusively working for the action. Then your allocation is 100%. But if you are carrying out also other tasks under your contract, you never know how much time you are going to spend on the project each month. 1 month it can be 30%, another it can be 40, 50, 10%, you never know. So avoid implementing the time allocation in your contract, in your labor contract. Unless you are exclusively working in the action, or for the action. Hours declared to the action must be supported by reliable records and documentation, and I said it before. What is a reliable time recording system? Timesheet, correct. So, time record, supporting documents. there is one question. Are you exclusively working for the action? You can see the definition of what is understood under working exclusively for the action. You can read it there. If the answer is yes, then the only thing that you have to sign is a declaration, and you've got a template available at the participant portal. So you just need to download it, fill it in, and sign. That's all. If the answer is no, then I recommend you to have the timesheets or any other type of reliable time recording system, which is timesheet. I'm really referring to timesheet because you are going to make your life so much easier by using timesheets, because you can also use the laboratory logbooks, for example, to prove that you worked in a laboratory, or you can document your time spent on the project by the report from the business trips. It's also a possibility, but to get all the information from different sources, it's a mess for you. So try to avoid this. What are the common errors when it comes to the time recording? Inconsistency with the human resources records. So if the auditor comes for an audit, he's going to check if your timesheet is in line with what they find in human resources record. That's the first thing. Then you have to sign, of course, the timesheet. You have to date the timesheet, and you have to avoid double funding. You can easily avoid double funding when you have one timesheet for more projects. If you are working on 2-3 projects, just use one timesheet. You can also add other activities just with the column other activities into that one timesheet, and you will have a picture of your whole day, working day. You will have, or maybe not only the whole day, but the whole month. All your working hours are in a timesheet. And then limited information captured. That's another problem. Which simply means somebody may ask, what are the minimum requirements for the timesheet? And I'm going to tell you. And here it is. Indicate nothing else but the reality. Okay? And the minimum requirements are that you have to indicate the title and the number of the action. You have to indicate the beneficiary's full name, date, and signature of the person that is working for the action. It's you. Number of hours worked for the action. Of course, supervisor's full name and signature, and a reference. Just a reference to work package or a task that you are working on during that month, let's say. It's sufficient, but it has to be there. Hourly rate. This is the only slide that I have about the hourly rate, because behind this one, the 1A, salary is project based, we can have another 40 slides. So I'm really not going into detail. I'm just going to say that the hourly rate, you can use the unit cost for the SME owners without salaries. That's what I mentioned previously. You can also use the average personal cost, but nobody is using it in Slovakia because there are some conditions that you have to fulfill, and it doesn't make sense to go this way. At least I think it doesn't make sense to go this way in our organizations in Slovakia. And then you've got the actual costs, and you've got two options. You are either project-based or not project-based, and based on that you will calculate the hourly rate. And you can declare the actual cost based on the calculation on the full financial year or on the per month, but you have to decide at the level of the organization. So you should have some instructions at the level of the university, let's say, how to calculate the hourly rate. And additional remuneration. Additional remuneration is connected with extra payment based on your time spent on H2020 project. You've got capping for the additional remuneration, it's 8,000 euros. This is full-time equivalent, so if it's less, then you have to recalculate it pro rata. And of course, this includes also the social contributions and all the contributions that the employer is paying on behalf of you. But you have to have at least internal rules. How are you going to remunerate people that are working in Horizon 2020 projects? And one thing is that it can't be only for the EU actions, because Horizon 2020 is part of the EU actions or EU programs. But to use this option of the additional remuneration, you have to have them at least at the level of international projects, let's call it. So we've got the national projects and international projects. Under the international, you've got EU plus others. Under EU, you've got Horizon 2020 and others. So we have to have directive or procedures which take this into consideration. Critical, very important. Then you have to instruct, or you have to decide who can get the extra remuneration, how much money they can get, and what they have to fulfill to get this money. And then you can charge up to 8,000 euros, including the social contributions. Another question that I'm receiving quite often is, how is it with the bonuses? What do you think? How is it with the bonuses? Can you declare the bonuses as part of the eligible costs? You heard it there. It depends. It depends. You can, and at the same time, sometimes you can't, because especially in Slovak organization, we use this type of bonuses, arbitrary bonuses, based on the decision of the supervisor. I like you, I give you some money. Oh, I'm sorry, I like your job, I give you some money. Okay? So this is not eligible. So we have to have rules for the bonuses, and for everybody. If you have a rules for all the employees, or at least for different categories of the employees, then there is no problem with the bonuses. You can have extra salary in June, in December. If it's coming from the collective agreement, it's perfectly fine for the basic remuneration. If it's specific for the participation in Horizon 2020, but you still have to have in mind that you have to have the directive for all the international projects. But if it is, then it can be under additional remuneration, this type of bonus. But if it's arbitrary bonus, it's an ineligible cost. How much time do I have? No time.
You have enough.
Still 5.5 hours.
Good. I will miss my plane. So this was one issue, the personal cost, really slight touch. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the subcontracting and contracts. What is the difference between contracts to purchase goods, works, services, which is under other direct cost, and the subcontract? The first one, you do not have to indicate this in Annex 1, in the description of action, whereas the subcontract has to be indicated in Annex 1, in the description of action. But the main difference is here, the first two boxes, first line. When it comes to the contracts are not covering or not implementing project tasks or tasks. When we talk about subcontract, you are implementing project tasks, but also part of the task. So you also have to be careful how you are going to write the task. How you specify the task. In some cases, it can be contract, but it also can be subcontract. It really depends how the task is written. And there is also a difference between where are you going to declare them, of course. If it's contract, then it's under other direct cost. If it's subcontract, then it's under the column direct cost of the subcontracting. Here you can see an example. In FP7, for example, the catering for the meetings, some translation services, maintenance of project website, maintenance and creation of the project website was more or less, if it was outsourced, it was subcontract. In Horizon 2020, it's contract, so we can claim indirect costs on this, like also on the travel, on the invoice for the accommodation. You can do the same. Unless you specify this as a task. If you have a specific task called developing of the project website and maintenance of the website, and you are going to outsource it, then it's not contract. It's subcontract. So this is the difference. So when you are preparing the proposal, be clever. Because you still can create space where you can charge the cost under other direct costs, not under the subcontract. It's recorded, so I'm not going to talk about this publicly. But we can talk about this face to face, of course. Some characteristics about the subcontracting is based on the business conditions, so we've got the profit margin there. There is no direct supervision. Responsibility still lies in hands of the beneficiary. The subcontractor doesn't have any rights or obligation towards the commission or agency or the other beneficiaries. So you as the beneficiary that is contracting the subcontractor is responsible for everything. Let's say it like this. You also have to ensure that the subcontractor can be audited by the OLAF, by the auditors from the European Court of Auditors, but also from the auditors from the Commission or Research Executive Agency. That's why we have also agency here, for example, but also other agencies, executive agencies. And also, when it comes to the universities, you are a contracting authority. You have to follow the national legislation, the rules about the public procurement. I'm going to skip this. Again, be clever. Foresee and justify all subcontracts in Annex 1 and 2 before signing the grant agreement. Because if you do it before, you do not have to come to a negotiation with the Commission during the implementation whether they will allow you to sign the amendment and include the costs under the subcontract. You can do it before. During the grant execution, do not wait until it's too late. Ask the project officer to include the subcontract. Justify in technical reports and communicate clearly. Well, thank you for your attention, and I'm open for any questions if there are some.
Yes, I have more comment than a question. It's very interesting all these financial rules that some of them maybe you don't know. But I feel that's not only the contact person or the responsible of the Horizon 2020 project has to know that, also the financial officer or the financial responsible of the institutes or universities.
Okay.
Because they tell me that I don't know how to do it. Yes, so those are maybe the main persons who should know all these rules.
I agree with you, and they can contact me. If they are not certain, they can contact either me or Jirka. Last year, I organized 2 events. And also, part of this presentation is from the European Commission communication campaign. We had 2 of them last year. One was in February, then the second one, if I'm correct, was in October. And we had 6 hours of financial things during that meeting, and we invited, during that seminar, we invited all the participants in Horizon 2020, all the beneficiaries that have project, but also this was distributed through the NCPs, so anybody could come. We had about 70-80 people in both events. So.
Just to ask, when was this?
February and October. But there was a condition from the Commission not to create a record. So there is no record.
2017.
Only presentations.
Only presentations, yes, but I can give you the presentation, just send me an email.
Okay.
But yes, I agree with you, at each university you should have a project center that should
the main
support
one.
you, or should support, yes, should is nice word.
Because there are certain things that you mentioned that this has to be done for all the projects, international ones, or at the institute level. So one project with personal investigator cannot do these things, right? So can take care of their own project, but not of the others.
Mm.
Okay.
Some more questions? Nothing? Okay. Thank you.